we're now going to see how America ultimately gets involved, and how that basically comes about. Now, many notices were put out like this from the Imperial German Embassy that says, "Notice travels intending to embark or leave on the Atlantic voyage. A reminder that a state of war exists between Germany and her allies and Great Britain and her allies. The zone of war includes the water adjacent to the British Isles, and in accordance with the formal notice given by this thing right here, ships flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters. Travelers sailing in the war zone on the ships of Great Britain and her allies do so at their own risk." And so that's what we have there. Now, we have a line of ships known as the Cunard. And of course, the biggest Cunard ship was the Lusitania. Here we have the idea the Lusitania will be going to Europe via Liverpool, and again we have that notice. Now the Liverpool was, of course, the Lusitania was the biggest of the Cunard line. We'll come back and get that. And what happens to the Lusitania is that it is sunk by a submarine. Again, yellow journalism, right? Probably 1,260 dead. Sinks in 15 minutes. Somebody keeping time there. I mean, that's kind of interesting. Twice torpedoed off the Irish coast. And so here's the problem. And when we look at the World War I museum video I have for you, there's an interesting thing we found here. The Americans said there was nothing here, but there actually was some contraband, which I think I left. Yeah, we'll get to contraband in a minute. So the Lusitania is it's an English ship, and it's carrying American passengers, and it is sunk. This is kind of bring things about. The Cunard line was a brand. Lusitania was one of them, of course, that will take people wherever they want. It's a traveler. Remember, they had been warned, and so you kind of do so at your own risk. But some people begin to call for war. All right. Now, a couple other boats. We have a French boat known as the Sussex, and it met a similar fate. Here you can tell the wreckage of it, correct? It's been kind of blown into two. There were some American passengers on board, so it's another boat that sunk. As well, we have the Arabic. And so we have the Arabic that will be sunk. Now, in order to quell America and keep them from getting involved, because Germans see this as happening pretty bad, we have kind of a sit-down, if you will, with the Germans, and we come up with the idea of what is known as restricted sub-warfare. Now, submarines at this time are vastly different. They actually had to completely come out of the water. I didn't learn this when I was at the museum, and fire. And the idea was to not actually hit the boat, but rather have the torpedo go underneath the boat and explode. In one of the videos, I'm standing next to a torpedo, and it's just enormous. The idea was to rip the boat in two and have it just basically capsize in. Now, restricted sub-warfare basically means you can only sink a boat in a certain area. And if there's anybody that was on a different vessel, from a different country, you had to see the log. And there's a lot of rules and regulations. And so the major fear, of course, is that contraband. Germans are afraid that the Americans are going to send the English stuff, which is not an unfounded thing. The thing is, we're in bed with the English at this point. And so that is it. Now, German submarines have a unique nickname. They are actually called U-boats. In World War II, they become a huge factor with groups of them called wolf packs, and we'll get into that. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. Now, the main thing here is that in 1916, Wilson's going to run for re-election. And there are people calling for going war, but most people did not want us to get involved. And so Wilson actually runs on the slogan of, "He kept us out of the war." And so naturally, with that slogan, people who do not want to go to war, knowing what happened in Spanish-American and the Philippine, and the Mexican-American in the 1850s and the Indian, we've had wars in this country for years. They love this. He's re-elected. Here's another thing. War in Europe, peace in America. God bless Wilson. And so here's the idea. We're staying out. We have restricted warfare. Everything is fine. And then we get a bombshell. That bombshell came in the form of a telegram. We did not receive this telegram. Rather, the English got it. They intercepted it from the Germans who were trying to get it to Mexico. It is named for the man, the foreign minister of Germany. His name is Zimmerman. We call it the Zimmerman Telegraph or the Zimmerman Note. Now, notice what it says. We intend to resume unrestricted sub-warfare. We're going to break the promise. We want to keep the United States neutral. In the event that we don't, Mexico comes in an alliance. They make war together. They make peace together. Generous financial support and an understanding on our part that Mexico would get back lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And so this is kind of compelling. And keep in mind how on edge Mexico was with the United States at this time, going back to Wilson, correct? Now remember, they don't get this. Rather, we intercept it. And so here you go with this, right? You have the German telling the Mexican, join Germany, you get a bit of the United States. I mean, this is a huge thing. So the Zimmerman Telegraph doesn't sit well with American citizens, doesn't sit well with Congress. And so the war thing begins a little bit more, but still that's not the last straw. The last straw is, of course, when they do go back to unrestricted sub-warfare, and they sink many, many boats, even ones flying the American flag. And it gets so bad they sink 30-something in a couple of weeks. It has now become apparent through the Zimmerman Telegraph and through unrestricted warfare that if we want to continue our nation's thing, we are going to have to get involved in this war. Now, why are they sinking American boats? They are afraid of what is called contraband. Contraband is a term, it's mainly used now for like jail and stuff that you're not supposed to have in jail. But contraband is illegal stuff aboard a boat or something, a boat for our purposes right now, that you're not supposed to have, that could aid the enemy even if you're neutral. And so you have had contraband, susceptible to contraband, we're going to sink you. Okay? So, contraband stuff you're hiding, like mock logbook, right? Now, because of this, Wilson goes up in 1917 and decides to ask for Congress to go to war. Congress, I guess, understanding the plight, will say yes. Now, his big saying, to kick him, right? Remember, he's moral diplomacy. We want to promote the things of the United States. So his saying was, we are going to make the world safe for democracy. So the idea is that these people, these allies, and maybe this is a good point to go through, the allies are maybe more democratic. They've gone away. England and France have gone away for their monarchies. Russia has a monarch, but they have a constitution in place. The other ones do as well. Whereas Austria-Hungary and Germany are still kind of reliant on the old monarchies of passed down to the family, etc. And so they're kind of letting things go. And so that's something we have there. Now, the last little thing here, we'll talk about the mobilization, America getting involved, and how we're going. Now, what I want you to look at here, I want you to be able to show how America moved from neutrality into war. What brought us into war? Did we do something? Did other people do something? Was it a combination? I also want you to tell me about the impact of the Zimmerman Telegraph. How huge was that to understand where we're going to go?